Talks right here. We gonna talk about it right here. I'ma talk about everything you like. I'ma make it real quick, cause it's Tynee Talks. And I'ma talk about it. Yeah, cause it's Tynee Talks. And I'ma talk about it.
Talkers, today's show is brought to you by Pure Cuts, located in Mansfield, Texas. That is 801 North Main Street in Mansfield, Texas. Pure Cuts is where you get the master barber experience. They specialize in men's cuts, kids cuts, women cuts, edge ups, braidings, lockery twists, the whole nine. You get the whole shebang when you go to Pure Cuts. So make sure you mention Tynee Talks and get a little percentage off your haircut. All right? Tell them Tynee sent you. And welcome to the Tynee Talks podcast, the podcast that educates and entertains, the podcast where you come to laugh and learn. I am your host, Tynee, and I'm so excited to bring you guys another exciting and informative and funny episode with my guest. Today's guest is a native of Flint, Michigan, currently residing in San Diego. And she is absolutely phenomenal. She is also the founder and creator of Just Real Good Granola. So, without further ado, welcome, Miss Karehma.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh, it is a pleasure. It is such a pleasure to have you. And today's show, we will be discussing the case of Amanda Seales and her Shannon Sharpe interview, her social media presence, and just overall, just a deep dive into such a brilliant mind that she is and how that brilliance can sometimes lead to backlash or people not ready to quite digest it. And so that's why I love that Amanda, has the podcast and the book called Small Doses, because she realizes that, with certain personalities, it can only be taken in small doses, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So welcome, Karehma. How you doing today?
I'm all right. I'm in one of the most beautiful and most best weather having places in the nation. So it's not bad for a Saturday morning. Let me know if I have too much background noise for you, because we pretty much live outside. Like that's how we get down out here.
I love it. Texas is one of those places where you only have a window of time where you can kind of live outside before it gets to burning hell degrees. So I'm enjoying it. We're enjoying that. We're in that season of weather right now. I do want to kind of start off with a little bit of disclaimer. Amanda, if you ever see this is in no way, shape, or form to bash you. We love you. We're giving you your flowers. We think you phenomenal. We think you that I said phenomenal. We think you are phenomenal, and keep doing the things that you do to uplift the Black community, to elevate the consciousness of all people. But I know that your heart lies with Black and brown people, specifically Black people, and that's okay. Okay, so we do want you to know that, just in case you come across this and like the case of Amanda Seales. What they trying to say? Want no smoke, girl? You my girl. You my friend in my head.
You my girl.
Since you was Dion, okay?
Girl, that's what I'm saying.
Like, you talk fast like me. This my friend. You know what I mean? So we just want to have that disclaimer. So without further ado, before we get started, Karehma, you want to say anything to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I am Team Amanda Seales. I saw her at the Observatory in San Diego. I think that was 2019 stand-up show, and it was dope. It was an intimate setting, and Amanda is really like she's not like the kind of comedian that we grew up on, like, like the comic view era. She's different. She's cerebral. She pretty much talked to you about all things social and political, and it happens to be funny. I don't, it's kind of like how people say, these ain't jokes, like this is real life. I mean, that's really what it is. So I followed her. I remember her on Def Poetry. I mean, she is truly a Renaissance woman. So I'm gonna support her. No one is beyond critique, but I'm always gonna support her. I feel her, and she has my biggest support.
Yes, she has. That was very well said. Yes, and people might not know that she's a comedian, and some people, say things like she not even funny, but it does take a certain level of intellect
Yeah.
to understand certain comedians, and not just her. Like there's several, you and I are comedy connoisseurs, and we like the goofy, the silly, the socially
Yeah.
conscious, the
Slapstick
socially
type deal. Yeah.
we like it all.
We like it all.
We've seen it all, we've heard it all, we've experienced it all, so we're not biased. And
Yeah.
whereas some people only like a certain brand or some like ghetto comedy. I hate to say it, but
We love that too. We love that too.
they're not ready. They're not ready, which is okay, which is completely fine. So yeah, so like we completely support Amanda. This is no anti Amanda, but we're gonna get into some things and we're gonna break it down. And we're gonna start off with
And I
the
got my little
Shannon.
notes too, so I stay on track.
So the first thing I wanted to really get into is we talked about the autism diagnosis and Amanda's intellectual dishonesty surrounding that. And first, I kind of actually wanted to do something with you, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So, where is it? I'm acting real dense now because I wanted to share my screen.
Okay.
And my screen, is this how I can share my screen? You ever feel like slow?
Hey, bear with me if I get real auntie on you, like on StreamYard, because I am not used to this platform. I feel like I've lived on Zoom, Teams, and all that other ish for like the last 4 years. So
Okay.
if I'm a little slow,
If I'm a
please
little geriatric,
drag me. Please drag me.
I'm
I'm
like,
okay.
girl, you use this all the time. Why are you acting like this? So please bear with me, talkers. Okay. So we know when we talk about Amanda's intellectual dishonesty, we're talking about what she said about her autism diagnosis and how people are really going crazy about what she means by like, no, I didn't have a clinical diagnosis. So, Karehma, what I wanted to do with you is actually give you, and can you see it?
I cannot see it.
Hold on. There we go. There we go. All right. Let me know if you can see it now.
I can see that. Okay.
All right. So I wanted you to take a quick autism test.
Okay.
All right. It's free, because people, when Amanda it was basically saying to the world, yes, I was diagnosed, but not necessarily a clinician. What she means by that is that she wasn't diagnosed by a psychiatrist. She did mention something about that you can be diagnosed by like a licensed therapist and things of that nature. And she also talked about taking these assessments. So I found this assessment from a mental health clinic in the UK called Clinical Partners.
Okay.
And it says, take our quick autism test. So let's see what it says about you. So I'm gonna ask you these questions. I prefer to do things on my own rather than with others. Do you definitely agree, slightly disagree, or definitely disagree?
I definitely agree.
All right, next question. I prefer doing things the same way. For instance, my morning routine or trip to the supermarket. Definitely agree, slightly disagree, definitely disagree.
Definitely agree.
Wait a minute now. I find myself becoming strongly absorbed in something, even obsessional. Definitely agree, slightly disagree, or definitely disagree.
I'm gonna say slightly disagree. It kind of lost me at obsessional.
Okay. I am very sensitive to noise and will wear earplugs or cover my ears in certain situations.
Definitely agree. Yeah.
Sometimes people say I am being rude, even though I think I am being polite.
I've been there. I would say slightly agree.
I find it easy to imagine what characters from a book might look like.
I find it easy to imagine what characters from. Ooh, I feel like you kind of got to be like a fiction person, and I'm not. I'm nonfiction, so
Okay.
I'm gonna say like Slightly disagree.
All righty. I find it easy to talk in groups of people.
Uh, Definitely disagree.
Okay. I am more interested in finding out about things than people.
Slightly agree.
All righty. I find numbers, dates, and strings of information fascinating.
Definitely agree.
I prefer nonfiction books and films to fiction.
Definitely agree.
You just said that. I find it upsetting if my daily routine is upset or changed.
Definitely agree.
It's difficult for me to understand other people's facial expressions and body language.
Definitely disagree.
Okay. You pick up on it?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have any problems making small talk with new people.
Definitely disagree.
I notice very small changes in a person's appearance.
I feel like that's more neutral. So let's just say slightly disagree.
Okay. When I was young, I used to play lots of let's pretend or imaginary games.
Mm, I'm going to say slightly disagree.
Okay. I like collecting information about things I am interested in.
Strongly agree.
Definitely agree or slightly
Yeah,
agree?
definitely agree. Sorry.
All right.
That's a car,
I
guys.
like
Sorry.
meeting new people.
Slightly disagree.
Okay. People close people close to me say I talk about the same things repeatedly.
Definitely disagree. No, I don't.
I find it easy to work out what people are thinking or feeling just by looking at their facial expressions.
That's a little dense. Let me read that again. Can you read it for me again?
I find it easy to work out what people are thinking or feeling just by looking at their facial expressions.
I'm gonna say slightly disagree.
Okay. New social situations make me feel anxious.
Definitely agree.
It's important to me to carefully plan any activities I am going to do.
Um, it is important. I'm gonna say slightly agree.
Okay. I find it hard to work out what people's intentions are.
Oh, definitely disagree.
Okay. I would find it really hard to play imaginary games with children.
Definitely agree.
I am a good diplomat and can help ease difficult social or work situations.
I tend to agree. I'm gonna say slightly agree.
Okay. I am often the last person to understand a joke.
Slightly disagree.
Okay. I like doing things spontaneously.
Slightly disagree.
Okay. If I am interrupted doing something, I find it hard to get back to what I was doing beforehand.
Definitely disagree.
Okay. I notice patterns in things all the time.
Definitely agree.
I have some very strong interests and get upset if I can't pursue them.
Strongly agree. Or definitely agree. Yeah.
Okay. And last question. I can tell if someone I am talking to is getting bored.
Definitely agree.
All right. Let's see what it says. Based on your results, there's a strong probability that you, Karehma, are autistic.
That's not my first time hearing that. Yeah.
Right. So this company that we use, which is based out of the UK, they're the top mental health company in the UK. And so you've said you've heard this before. And so technically the probability is there. So more than likely, if someone were to take this test, then they would suggest that you go do the next steps. So there is a strong possibility that Amanda, like she said, there are several online assessments that she took an assessment along these lines of questioning and kind of came to this conclusion, especially if you're used to doing these things over time and you may have felt odd or awkward at some times in your life and like, why am I this way? And it's like, oh, this assessment, oh, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So can you speak to the idea of her her self-diagnosis versus a diagnosis, and like how clarifying statements can either um ha- basically limit your integrity in the eyes of public people or what they
Absolutely. So that was the biggest letdown in the interview. I when I was watching the actual interview, I just tried to keep going. I said, I don't even know how deep she's going to get into how this is relevant to everything else. So I just kind of like pushed through. I said, okay, we'll put a pin in that because I don't think she quite answered this question. And I knew when he dropped his head like this with his cue cards in his hand, I was like, yeah, no. But I moved on. But then, between watching that clip again on other people's platforms and on Shannon's platforms and watching people drag her for it, it hit different. I was saddened. I was like, that was a missed opportunity for one. I don't feel like it was honest. I think the play on words between clinical was an opportunity for her to kind of not be as forthright. I think what Shannon meant when he said clinical was like, was it a person that diagnosed you? You know what I mean?
correct. Yeah.
And most people would say that if you think clinic, you literally think a clinic with doctors in it.
Correct.
But she took, I think she took the opportunity to say, yes, this is a clinical diagnosis, which assessments, questionnaires, kind of like reverse engineering, that kind of thing, and getting to like through process of elimination, deduction, all those things can be considered clinical diagnoses. So technically she wasn't wrong. Like, it is a
Correct.
clinical diagnosis. It's
Right.
just that's not what he asked.
Correct.
And I think she knew that he probably, and I'm not calling Shannon stupid. I think a lot of people was like coming from his own intellect,
Yeah.
but I think some people's vocabulary is limited and their
Yeah.
definition is limited. So I think she exploited that. I hate saying it, like I just feel like, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So a clarifying statement would have been good, but I think she withheld that. I think she withheld that to protect herself because like people do dismiss self-diagnosis all the time. I mean, I've been skeptical for people that's close to me that have diagnosed themselves, and I understand that that's hurtful. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So she protected herself. She did what people do when they lie, tell white lies, whatever, whatever. So I think she should have been willing to put that on the line. I think she should have been able to put her fear of having it dismissed on the line, and just say, like, I have not received a diagnosis from a doctor, but I've done my due diligence in, to the best of my knowledge of like what these characteristics and traits look like, and this is how I characterize myself. It may not have gone very far in getting people on her side, but it would have prevented people from calling her a liar, a
Yeah.
narcissist, having a personality disorder, stuff like that. So that was the most disappointing part of that.
Yeah, something you also shared when it comes to these conversations regarding mental health is that when you basically, when your integrity is shaky by the words that you use, it kind of diminishes the conversation surrounding mental health, which already has a stigma to it. So you have to be really careful with the words that are said. For example, I was raised by a parent that had bipolar disorder, and it's so loosely said in just everyday jargon. If someone is upset, they'll say, "Oh, they bipolar."
Yeah,
You know what I
right.
mean? They just kind of throw it out there, and it
Right.
kind of reduces the severity or in the understanding of what bipolarism is, because it's not about an angry outburst.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Bipolarism is extreme highs and extreme lows. Like it's depression and manic depression and all of that bottled in one. So kind of along the lines of autism, how these we talked about the other day about how mental or I want to say mental health or different what do you call it? Different diagnoses can intersect with one another.
Correct. Right.
For example, autism can mirror a little bit of ADHD.
Right. Yeah.
While that can also mirror OCD. Because some of the things that were said, like it has been said to me that I may have ADHD, but I haven't been clinically diagnosed. But some of those questions, like I don't like my routine interrupted. I do the same thing every day. I go like all of these different things. And if I'm knocked off of it, it makes me jittery, right? And so that could be considered a little OCD, ADHD, and also it mirrors a little bit of autism. So just having people understanding those things and reading more and understanding it more, and not just looking at the buzzwords of it, or having an idea of what it looks like to them. Like if a person thinks of a bipolar person, they think it looks this way. When they think of a depressed person, they think of a person just when there's like a lot of high functioning depressed people, walking around. You spoke to the idea of Amanda not explaining that part in great detail. I kind of feel that she did, but for an audience not wanting to hear it, or a host not wanting to hear it, then you kind of already get in defense mode, because it kind of started off in a defense. Before her guard could be kind of down, it kind of started off as a defense mode, because even though she lives in the real world, she spends a lot of time on social media, and that social media kind of knocks her down a lot, or public figures knock her down a lot, her skin folk knock her down a lot. So for her to come on this platform, although she was welcomed and invited, she didn't know if she would have to really verbally spar with someone.
Right. And that's fair. Like, I think she clarified a lot of things after the show. Like when people started coming for her, I think she offered some clarifying statements afterwards, where she talked about how the diagnosis costs like $10,000 and stuff like that. I just think like there was a fatal error that is pretty binary, and that was, did you have a clinical diagnosis? Your answer is yes, it is a clinical. No, that, like, to me, that's like on or off. That's not, there's no gray. That was a clear question.
No.
You know what
the
I'm saying?
Answer is no.
The answer is no. So now there was gems in what she said afterwards, about, how much it costs and stuff like that. Now, I don't know if it's $10,000 or not. I have asked around. I've asked a couple people that's been in the mental health sector. I've looked at YouTube videos. I've seen other people say that it costs like $2,000. But shit, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, 2,000, 10,000, it's all the same for like me, okay? Like, especially if you live out here,
in California, you might as well have said that was $1 million.
Right. So either way, people have said that it's expensive. Like that's the salient point, right? But the other thing that I really found insightful from people who self-diagnose is that there is a process in getting the diagnosis. Someone very close to me pointed out that the resources may be better in certain regions than others. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to like disparage like any kind of smaller towns, but I don't know if there's like a plethora of specialized autistic, specialized professionals in small places in Oklahoma. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Areas.
Yeah, so access can truly be difficult to come by, like Amanda said. Like, none of those things were wrong. Because so many people have said it before. And another video that I watched, it was a Black therapist, and I'll keep this part short, but she was saying like the autism ASD entered the Diagnostic Statistics Manual in 2013. Like, so, and she said before then there was autism, infantile autism before that. And then before that, way back in the 40s, people describe autism using more like schizophrenia traits, So ASD, as we know it today, and anybody can, whoever watches this, feel free to clarify anything that I'm saying. I'm not the expert, but what she was saying was ASD as we know it today, as of 2013 in the DSM, is a combination of all these things: schizophrenic traits, infantile autism, which makes it sound like it was something that was really more focused on infants and youth, to like what you see today. That's what all those things, and probably then some, make up ASD. What I took from that is, how old was I like in 2013? I'm pushing 30 in 2013. I'm like, if I cared enough to know about this about myself at that time, and I was self-diagnosing, or say if I even went to see a therapist, that literally sounds like I'm learning in parallel with other professionals. Like if they're just clarifying it, and like, I know as much as they know at this point, like, or vice versa, you know what I mean? So as an adult, what are the chances that you're probably going to be diagnosed accurately? Like you are literally specimen that's like for practice, like as people are learning about these things. And so that may lead some people to believe that, hey, you're not gonna sit up here and tell me because I don't have a degree that I can't self-assess. I'm pretty much doing like what you're doing now. I'm
doing what you're doing. And in physicians, if you've ever been to the emergency room, it'll say right in the paperwork, we are practicing.
Practicing.
If you ever worked in a healthcare setting, which I have, they'll have books under the desk or in a, they're like, oh, let me go look this up. Let me go. And not to diminish what they do, but it takes practice. And over time, again, you become an expert in that thing. So if this thing is only about a decade old in diagnosing, they're still learning about it, and it will evolve. Over time, just like schizophrenia was back in the day. If my mom was diagnosed with these things in the early 90s. So had she been diagnosed around the time as like Malcolm X's mom, they would have thrown her in a facility and put the little things on her head.
People was doing like whole lobotomies, like stuff that we would never do
brains out.
Like, let's just scoop a chunk of your brain out and that ought to take care of it. Like, what?
A whole biopsy of your brain, which is essential.
And the other thing that I learned in that video too was like there's like 3 levels of it. There's level 1, 2, and 3, with 3 exhibiting the most symptoms, and probably the most disruptive, and it's probably more identifiable in children. And then as adults, it probably just looks like, you're just, I don't know, irresponsible or whatever. But but that's but this doctor said that most people probably fall in level 1, where and that's, I guess, where you get high functioning from.
High functioning for sure.
And the level of, for one, by that time, if you're level 1 and you've been long level 1, the things that your parents probably saw when you were a kid, they probably was just hoping that you would grow out of it. They didn't think that it was severe enough to actually go see somebody about it. But they probably thought it's a nuisance, but they're immature. Maybe it'll change. And then by the time you're an adult, these things are still kind of present. But now you've missed your window as an adult to meet the criteria that you would normally be assessed for, so that makes it really hard. And Amanda very well could be level 1. I don't know, that's what is given, so.
You really brought up a great point when you mentioned that. Number one, let's go back to the money piece. Some people might look at Amanda, which you and I talked about, and say, $10,000, girl, you're on TV, you're famous, you're this. She lives in California. She's traveling. Like, we don't know what $10,000 to her could be $50 to us. And it has to be, allocated to something of more importance than pressing than that. And you live in California, so you already know. So $10,000 could be 2 months rent. So do I want to get this diagnosis, or do I want to have a roof over my head? So we can't necessarily count people's pockets. And at the same time, if there is one for $2,000 versus maybe she wants the top doctor, maybe the top doctor who's a complete expert in this field, who has studied it for 25 plus years. You probably want the best of the best. Sometimes we lay people, I guess you could say, have to settle for what is around us because we don't have the options, but we know the socioeconomic status of where you lie gives greater health outcomes and more exposure and more access, as you said. You mentioned something about things going untreated or misdiagnosed and how that shows up differently as an adult, right? So you could be looking like, oh, they just lazy or they ain't X, Y, and Z. So I went to the McLean Hospital and they have a whole area dedicated to mental health. And so the thing is, women, and I talked to a therapist about this, women are more likely to be untreated or misdiagnosed when it comes to mental health. And although we're talking about autism, it falls under the bracket of mental health.
Right.
And so here are some reasons why women go untreated or misdiagnosed in certain areas, certain things. Some number one, gender bias, economic status. Women are twice as likely to experience depression, but because we're expected to behave a certain way and cope, it goes untreated. Women are twice as likely to experience anxiety. It says 20%, and this is a stat, 20% of all women will. This is not, they might, this is definitive. 20% of all women will experience rape or attempted rape in their lifetime. Women are exposed to higher rates of PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder associated with sexual violence. So whether the person went through with the act or they attempted to, this will happen to a woman or someone that identifies as female at some point in their life. It's guaranteed to happen. 20% of the women population, and that's great. Suicide. Women are more likely to attempt suicide than men, although men are more likely to go through with it. So women will get to the point of oh my God, I'm tired of it. They will attempt, but they don't necessarily follow through, which causes a whole nother set of mental issues that they're left to cope with. And then there is a socio-cultural imbalance. Societal pressure and expectations that women cope with regularly can increase their chances of developing mental health issues. There's more value placed on a woman being more physically attractive, empathetic, nurturing, etc. Which leads us to our next point that you wanted to talk about, which is Amanda's assertiveness and her being smart. Because women are not supposed to necessarily be that assertive. They should be more nurturing. And because of this socio-cultural imbalance, what we see, the spew that is the hate or the rhetoric geared towards Amanda is quite harsh. Because of this social cultural imbalance. So can you speak to that, especially as it came out in the interview?
Right. So and this is like, first of all, I identify with so much of like Amanda, her person, but also some of the criticism. So for me, I think assertiveness, for one, in this country and in our culture, assertiveness is not really, it doesn't come natural. Like you have to, that's a communication skill that has to be taught. If you ever talk to people that's like from Europe or Africa or maybe certain parts of the Middle East, and our observation of them is how blunt they are. and they talk about people here like how kind of passive in communication we are. That's true. Like for one of the most powerful countries in the most powerful country in the world, assertiveness is really not our strong suit. And I feel like that's a power play, but that's another story. But it's not really something that's taught. And so and that includes like white people. So by the time you get to Black people, that's even more pronounced, because we were lynched for assassin, talking back. We weren't allowed to read. You could be hung or beaten for like learning how to, you know what I mean? So we have a legacy of not being assertive just out of survival. And these are my theories about it. People may have other theories, but I think that this is really our issue. We are not used to being assertive with one another. We recognize assertiveness in Karen. Like, that's why we call her Karen. Like, you know what I'm saying? And even though we don't respect the Karen, we will respect the white man that's assertive. We expect them to do that, you know, but I feel like we have a different code of conduct for one another. And so when you have somebody like Amanda Seales, who, in her words, I speak so deliberate, I'm like, that's a whole word, but I don't think everybody appreciates that. I think many people don't. And some people might swallow it, but it don't mean that they don't feel a type of way. So I think first off, assertiveness is something that I think we need to be more comfortable with, because, you know, we spent the better part of 5 years talking about boundaries and this self-care and, you know, putting ourselves first and cutting people off who's not serving us and blah, 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 blah. Like, if that's the case, assertiveness has to be part of that. Like that's
I'll throw this mic at you. I
like,
will throw this mic at you.
you
Speak
can't
on
have,
it.
yeah, you know, like, if 2024 and 2025 is going to be your year of boundaries, what do you think you have to do to make your boundaries known? You have to assert the boundaries. And
If you want to live your best life.
thank you. So she's someone that is very accustomed to speaking that way. Sound like she has always been that way, whether that's attributed to her claims of autism or not. It sounds like it's not something that started in adulthood, you know, as she demonstrated in the example with her teacher in grade school. So I think our issue is just understanding how to read assertiveness is non-threatening, but really just clear and concise communication.
Oh, Karehma.
And mind you, when I was a kid, like, I'm not the only child. I have an elder sibling, but I grew up the only child. So I pretty much, you know, lived in my own head. You know, I didn't have a feedback loop basically from my siblings and stuff like that. So I didn't really talk a whole lot because I felt like the conversations was just going on anyway. Like, from what I thought, what I was interested in, like, the conversation was happening. It just wasn't with with other people.
Yes.
But when I did speak, it was very direct. And I think if you're someone who is perceived, especially if you're a girl, that is perceived as someone who should be shy and more docile and stuff like that, you can be pretty shocked to hear someone like myself be so straightforward, you know. And I think that's a bias. I don't think, you know, people translate their bias into like disrespect, like, oh, well, we didn't see that coming. Well, you know, I've had people literally tell other people, I don't like how she talked to me. And they don't know that the person shared that feedback with me. And I'm scratching my head like, how did I talk to them? Like, you know what I mean? And I would literally be confused. I'm like, I don't know what I did. So this is where, if you hear this enough, this is where society stomps some of this stuff out of you. So I've tried dialing it back and beveling the edges and kind of like kneecapping my statements. And I sounded like an effing idiot. Like, it's not like now no one knew what I was saying. Nobody, it was unclear. There was all these fluff words.
Gray area galore.
Yeah. And I'm like, that doesn't work either. So that made me more anxious, because I'm like, I don't think they even understand. I don't even understand what I just said. So then I met that with vengeance, and then I got more blunt. And now I'm angry. So now this isn't like healthy assertiveness. Now this is aggression, because I felt like I betrayed myself and it didn't get me anywhere. So now I'm getting it back in blood. And at that point, now I am a jerk. Like, you know what I mean? So these are things that if you live long enough, you kind of like, you know, go through the sine wave, the ups and downs of like, you know, people pleasing versus not people pleasing versus being what is close to your natural self as you think you are. It's a learning process. And only you know that intimately about yourself. No one knows what that's like. So that's why I had to give her a lot of grace. Matter of fact, I didn't have to give her shit. Like, it came natural. I got it. I'm like, I totally get it.
I completely get it. To that point about assertiveness, boundaries, being direct. You talked about America, and I really want to say it's parts of America, because me coming from the north, coming from Flint, and coming to the south, where I feel like Flint, because of the direness, the hustle culture, the resilience, the torn downness of always having a grind, makes you more bold, makes you more direct, makes you more blunt. so to speak. And because of that dynamic coming to the place of the South, where you're supposed to be right, more docile, speak in hushed tones, say this but mean this, but say it this way to really mean that. There's a lot of confusion there. And so I'm a very direct person. And like you said, because of people's own implicit bias of what that looks like, or you're a Black woman, and so because they already think you're angry Black woman, then you should not assert yourself. And so we have to constantly tell ourselves, like, don't lean into the bias of you don't speak up for yourself because you're going to be perceived this certain way. Then it's going to keep happening, and then it's going to keep acting that way. And so it seems for me, in the situations that I'm in, I'm always having to be the change agent. And sometimes that is taxing, like a person like Amanda, the person like you, the person that's constantly speaking up, and you like, y'all gonna back me?
Right.
But they want you to champion it, right? Because they really want to do it. And I had a situation like that a few weeks ago, and I won't say where I was at, but I spoke up about something. And then instead of people championing me in the grand scheme with everybody there, I got side chats. I'm so glad you spoke up. It needed to be said. Why wouldn't you do that when it counted, right? So again, looking like angry Black woman, but I'm not taking that on because I wasn't angry. Nothing about what I was saying was angry. It was just the truth. It was the truth.
Period.
And then so that assertiveness can be like, it's like, oh yeah, everybody wants an Amanda Seales in their life.
Period. That part.
Until ...
Yeah, exactly.
Until ... And you kind of mentioned that, till it mess with your money, until it mess with your social status. But you need those type of people because they're the only type of people that move the needle forward.
Absolutely.
And before I get into that more, the boundaries piece of being assertive. Just in my friend group recently, and I know she's going to watch this, but this is a really great example of having boundaries. A group of us, we were, talking about a friend invited us somewhere and I literally had an excuse. Not that I had to have an excuse, but I really had a reason. I want to say excuse. I had a reason. I can't do this because X, Y, and Z. My calendar is full. My other friend said, I just don't want to. No, my other friend didn't say that. She just said, no, I'm not going.
No, period. Yeah.
She said, no, I'm not going.
Yeah.
And so then the other friend was like, oh, well, what's your excuse? And she said, well, that's not an excuse. I just don't want to. But if you would like for me to make an excuse, I will. But that's just my boundary. And so I supported that for her. And I know she's going to watch this because I know that she's working on her boundaries, because creating boundaries and sticking to boundaries takes a lot of work because we so often bend. I know that I do it even when I'm, trying my best, even going to therapy. Therapy isn't the fix all. It helps you to fix.
Yeah, it gives you tools.
But it doesn't happen in 24 hours. It doesn't even happen in 6 months. Sometimes
and it's so uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable. Like it really, like people don't know, like you might have a brave face as you're establishing your boundaries, but they don't know, like part of you is dying on this. So like, oh my goodness, I may never have friends again. Everyone's gonna hate me. I'm gonna have to explain myself. Like they don't know. They have no idea.
I gotta over explain. So when Amanda is like, I have to over explain, right? And so that comes off as assertive. That comes, she too smart because you're so literal, like people with these intersecting mental diagnoses or health things that they, the mental things. You have to over explain, or you have to be very direct. It cannot be black and white, because I'm a person, you got to be direct with me, because sometimes I won't pick up on your little context clue.
Yeah.
Maybe give it to me straight, no chaser. But again, so many people think they're going to offend, or you say no. Another example, I had invited someone to something, and instead of them saying, I'm not going to come, when I kept texting them, like, are you almost here? I mean, they saying, yeah, I'm almost here. My Uber, da. And I'm like, we didn't held off this activity.
Right.
Literally the next day. Well, finally, after hours went by, now we at like 1 a.m. Then they finally say, oh, I'm not going to make it at 1 a.m. Right? So The next day, they gave the real reason. I don't like to drive at night, so I really wasn't coming. When being direct,
We could have saved so much time.
we could have saved time. We could have, like, stuff like that. You're not going to offend me because you're not coming. Oh, but maybe they had an experience where someone was offended.
True. Yeah.
That's on them, not on you.
Right.
Again, learned behaviors.
Learned
But back
behaviors.
to, like I said, we need people like Amanda in the world because they're the people that move the needle forward. Like if we didn't have the Black Panther Party, like these kids out here hungry.
Yeah.
So we're going to start this free breakfast program, which the government has adopted now as their own, when it was really the Black Panthers.
Yeah.
Speaking up about this, we need the Huey P. Newtons. We need the Amanda Seals.
Yeah.
We need the Malcolm X. We need Martin Luther King. We need Shirley Chisholm. Mm-hmm. We need Karehma Simon, and we need or like you in the notes that you wrote up about me and you versus Miss Natchkey. Hope you ever see this, Miss Natchkey.
I was like, I didn't know if I should say her name, but
I'm saying it.
Say her name.
I'm saying it, Miss Natchkey.
Do we want to do that? Do we want to discuss that example right quick?
If feel free.
I remember it. I don't know. My memory is pretty good. So, whatever the name of that class was, what was it? World.
It was like world something with the world.
Something economics.
Economics. It was economics.
Yeah, world economics.
World economics.
But she was she mentioned this philosopher, and I get all of my philosophers mixed up. I don't know if it was Confucius. I don't know who the hell it was, but it was somebody that said like their philosophy was, don't do to others what you wouldn't want done to yourself. Mm-hmm. And she made the comparison to the biblical way of saying this, like do unto others as you would want done. And she said it's the same, but the other one is kind of churchy, and this one is like more direct. And you was like, no, it's not churchy. Like, so me watching like this, right? I knew what she was saying and I knew what you were saying.
Yeah.
If I were you, and tell me if I was right in my assessment, it felt like it was just a little condescending towards Christianity.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, like churchy. Like that's not even a word that don't have kind of a demeaning context to it. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So I was like, I feel where Tynee coming from. That's a little slighting. And it's ultimately, the same thing, just said a different way. You wouldn't let it go. She was so annoying. The way she rolled and cut her eyes and tried to move forward. I'll
die on the hill. I'll die on the hill about it. And the philosopher, I think, was Ralph Waldo Emerson, by the way.
Okay, yeah.
I think.
she was like, yeah, I know what you mean. But it's saying don't do unto other. Like she just really was emphasizing the commanding or imperative way it was stated. And I'm like, that's cool. But you could have just left it at that. You didn't have to say churchy for knowing that you got a classroom full of Black kids
who all go to church, whether they're Christians or not. They raised in the church. They've been indoctrinated.
But I think it was like 3 exchanges between y'all, and she just let it go. I was like, yeah.
But not only that, we had her for a little bit because she was like a guest or long-term sub.
Yeah,
that was just one example, but she had a bias about Black kids.
Oh, I bet she did. I didn't,
but she kind of said it in different interactions.
Yeah,
so I was just the person that was going to, I feel like, standing up for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been the person that's going to stand up, since elementary. Oh, you said we couldn't have a party, but we did all the right things. You said if we did this, this, and this, then we could do it. You know what I mean? You're gonna follow through. And that's Amanda. She calls out what this country says that it's supposed to do with the law. And because she's well studied and she's a historian and she reads, emphasis on reading.
Yeah.
She reads.
Yeah.
Then people are, like you said, the smartness offends. It offends when you yourself, the people that is consuming what they are seeing in a video, they don't read, then they don't understand the historical context. They don't understand any
Right.
context, excuse me, of the conversation. So it comes off as, oh, she's condescending. She thinks she knows more than him.
Right. Right.
And it's not about thinking a person knows more or this or that. It's just, I know what I know. I know what I know.
You know what you know.
And women what was that? The lady that's on the beginning of the Beyonce's album. The African lady that does the speaking, but she says women are taught to pit themselves against each other and then shrink.
Yeah.
Y'all wanted Amanda to shrink because we live in patriarchy as well. And this is when people hear patriarchy because they don't read. It's no shade to men. This is saying because it's male dominated that you think that a woman should supposed to show up this way in front of a man.
And Amanda has said this on her Breakfast Club interview. It was one episode, and I remember all her outfits. I think this was the one where she had on the little tan joint, and her hair was anyway. She was
her outfits be real cute.
I remember all her. She didn't had like 20 interviews on the Breakfast Club, and they are all solid. Like she be dropping gems. But she was saying like people want you to say you think. No, sometimes you just know. And that's beveling the edges again. Like if you say think you now listen, I understand diplomacy, and there are times where I think that can work. I think you really have to read the room. If there are people who it's kind of like a comic who doesn't want to punch down, like you punch up, you make yourself kind of like the sacrificial lamb to gain people's trust. That's a case in which you can say, okay, even though I know the answer, let's explore this. How about that? Like, you know what I'm saying? And in some cases, it feels very disingenuous because we've all had a manager in corporate America who has done that. Like when you're voluntold to do something. Okay. But let's just say this ain't that. This is about you really trying to reach, people where they are. But the people that who come for Amanda are not those people. These are people who could easily be like on her, maybe not have a master's degree and be studying all this stuff, but these are people who can hold their own. Why do you feel so threatened? Like that's the thing, you know what I mean? Like she doesn't have to bevel anything for you. You're okay. You're healthy. You're whole. You're smart. You are important. Like you got it.
You is important. Why are you so threatened by?
Why are you so threatened, bro?
I think so many people are threatened because you and I all know that just because you go to college doesn't mean you're smart.
Facts.
It just means that you did the work, you completed it, and you graduated. Now, some people, I work in higher ed, so I see it often. I see the students who really come to learn. I am a learner. You know what I mean? I like to learn all the time. So, but there's people that just came to get a grade. And so I think those are the people that is like, oh, I went to college too. But did you learn? Were you engaging? Were you just trying to get that grade? And you you know what I mean? Because there is a difference. Even when you dialogue with people, when you dialogue with them, you know, is this engaging? Is this moving forward? Is this a surface convo or whatever the case may be? But like you said, you are well versed in diplomacy, and we know with autism, context clues are not a thing.
Yeah.
So you can't read the room. Let's just say, even if she didn't throw the autism diagnosis out there, right? If you've been a person who didn't know how to read the room, you just didn't know that there was a title for it.
Right. Yeah.
Because people might have called you slow or duh or dumb blind.
Yeah.
They use all kind of colloquialisms to say whatever about something that could be a real thing. So if you're really trying to bring in your point, and everybody again is not being direct with you, and they're just giving you the I wouldn't say or
and we do that very well. Like as a culture, like we've almost kind of made it like an aesthetic, you know what I'm saying? And it works. Like nice nasty is real fly, like it's real sexy. Like we the masters of clapbacks and gathering and stuff like that. But there's a time where that's to a fault. So if you're still not really making it plain, somebody like Amanda is gonna grate on your skin, and it's just like no, like
I love that.
You know what I mean? So that's one thing that I observed is like we've made lemonade out of lemons. The analogy I'm making that to is like where we couldn't because of slavery and whatever other oppressive system, where we have not been able to say it plain and say what we want to say. We've developed code with each other, and that has preserved us, that has protected us. Now we have our own, we have words in our own lexicon. We have AAVE. Those things have served us well as a culture. It's what makes us cool. It's what makes us really envied by a lot of other cultures. It's got people copying us, for crying out loud. So it works. Like that kind of like evasiveness, say it without really saying it, has worked. But we've seen what happens when it really doesn't work. We've seen when somebody is like more deliberate. It is not met well at all.
Right. But it's also not met well when, again, when we're categorizing it incorrectly.
True. Facts,
because there are people trying to put that for example, we all know this.
Yeah.
Right? They're trying to put that on Amanda.
Right.
You know what I mean? I ain't say no words, but you know what I mean.
Right.
And they're not the same.
That's not the same, right?
You know what I mean?
That was perfect. Exactly.
So, shoot, I forgot. Well, where are we next on the notes? Did we cover everything?
We talked about Miss Nash Keisha, Miss Nash King. Okay. I did want to, let me see. Smartness. Oh yeah. Smartness was kind of like in a similar vein as assertiveness. So in my observation, I don't think there's anything that's more offensive than smartness. Like someone perceiving that even if you think that someone thinks that they're smarter than you, which is wild to me. But anyway, there is nothing more offensive than that. Not even wealth is more offensive, because if you see, we know that we all live in a class stratification, right? We know there are people that are way more affluent than us. You are more likely to still admire the wealthy person, if for nothing else, something to aspire to, than you are to admire the person that's actually smarter than you, whether perceived or real. Like, you know what I'm saying? So that begs the question of like, well, what is it about smartness? What is it about? And I'm not even gonna like slice and dice between, well, there's smartness and then there's intelligence and, you know, and then there's wisdom. No, we're not doing that. So let's just take smartness at face value.
Yes.
Being well learned, educated beyond the bare minimum. That is probably the most threatening thing. And I heard, and there was somebody years ago that said, this was in context of like a social political conversation, but she was saying like, they keep things from you, and we know who they are. The powers that be, they keep it from you. They don't want you to know, because the more, if you knew, that means that they have to share the wealth. And I thought that was so I don't know, though, even the words are escaping me. I was like, well, that's a really dope way of putting that. The more you know, the more a threat you become to wealth distribution or wealth hoarding, right? And so just thinking back on just that little piece that I heard that stuck with me from that, whatever that conversation was, it made me think that, yeah, there is something to be said about people who are smarter than you, way more than someone that's prettier than you, way more than someone that's wealthier than you, way more than someone that's more religious or closer to God than you. There is something very threatening about smartness, because it's the thing that gets people so much in a tizzy. And I hate that for us. Like I hate that for us. Like, I hate that. And I think, and just real before I forget this, I think the time where I see people okay with smartness is if that person can use their smartness to teach people how to get more wealth. That's why people listen to Dame Dash talk about the same stuff over and over again about owning a bit. Like, that's why people love Gary Vaynerchuk. Like, if the smartness is about how to get more money, we cool with that. But smartness for its sake, smartness for political advancement, smartness for liberation.
What?
Nah, we ain't doing that. We ain't, nah, sit down somewhere.
Smartness for liberation? You want to be free?
What?
What?
Get the fuck out of here.
Are you nuts?
We ain't come here for all that.
What do you think? You're Harriet Tubman?
Right. That is wild, right?
Karehma, shut up your face and zip it shut. Because guess what is smartness, right? Smartness. Right?
So threatening.
It's threatening. Amanda reads, which is great. Not only does she read, she shares verbally, right? Something that we often hear, which I think we can stop saying it so much, is if you want to hide something from Black people, all you gotta do is put it in the book. They ain't gonna read it. And I hate that.
Yeah.
Because before we could read, before books were written, we had this.
Absolutely.
It was very oratory.
Mm-hmm.
It was very pass it down. Tales, fables, myths, talking. Jesus wasn't walking around, whether you subscribe to Christianity or not, or the great philosophers. Before it was written down on tablets, and it was
spoken
word of mouth.
Yeah.
So what they really want to do to keep it from you is keep you from talking to those smart people.
Exactly.
They don't want the smart person to.
Yeah.
Did Harriet have a book that she wrote down?
Right.
Like, we sure ain't gonna read it. Was it a book? Or was it word of mouth?
Right.
I used to work at Cedar Point, America's Rock and Roller Coast. Okay. I'm so indoctrinated. America's Rock and Roller Coast. And they said, you notice we don't do a lot of advertising. We don't spend a lot of money in advertising. They said this park is known all over the world because of word of mouth. Because you got to make these people feel good that they're going to go tell another family who's going to bring 4 people or 6 people. Yeah. So word of mouth has always been it. So they want to shut down those change agents, those voice givers, those smart people that we talk about often. Yeah. Because they don't want you to hear it. That's why the government's working hard to say, because TikTok is changing people's lives. Yeah. Like opening, whether it's a recipe, whether it's a new hack to clean a certain way, and that's not a book. Yeah. And I know they're saying we're getting away from books, and reading books is phenomenal. I'm a reader. Same. Amanda's a reader, but they're not mad because she read books, because if she read 1,000 books for the book club and got free pizza at Pizza Hut, right? They're okay with that. It's about what did she share with the people once she read this book. And that's why smartness offends. Because as much as they say that you need to become an entrepreneur, and this is no shade to entrepreneurs, or you need to do this and do this, everybody can't be rich. Everybody can do it. Capitalism works because there's a bottom class. Right, exactly. There's free labor somewhere, or low paid labor. Amazon. Yep. Yep. You get what I mean? And so that's
and Uber. The platform economy is the worst.
The platform economy. Oh gosh. But the person had the idea, right? And that's what capitalism is. And my husband helped me understand capitalism so much more, because this world says you came up with the idea, so you deserve billions. Yeah. Although the people that are executing your idea, so they deserve $5.
Right. For a 20-minute ride.
While you lay up in Aruba. Right. but it's just about equality, things that they don't want us to say anymore. Equity, things that they don't want us to say anymore. But like you said, people will pay the smart person that says, well, if you did this, you can make this as much money. But what they don't tell you is that everybody can't do it. Right. Because if everybody did do it, and I was trying to explain this to my brother the other day, he was like, Black people are not going in high paid careers and not. But what he doesn't understand is, if everybody went into IT, then that minimizes the lucrativeness of that. Yeah, job. It dilutes it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's the word. That's what I meant to say. Get on that post and argue for me. Yes, it dilutes it if everybody goes, and now it's no longer high paid. Yeah. That's what I was explaining to him, and he was like, no, you. But yes, it dilutes it. And that's the thing. They want you to keep thinking that you have a shot. When the shot is so randomized And that's why they uphold the 3, 4, 5, 6 people that are Black who made it that far.
Yeah. Yep. Because you ain't seen no more since.
But the reason why you ain't one of the 6, you ain't the 7th, because you didn't take this class pyramid scheme. And that's why smartness offends.
That's why smartness offends. That's a whole word.
And we can close it out right there. We can set a bit of diction. Oh,
pass the plate.
So all in all, Amanda, we wanted to give light to those who may come across this podcast to say we support you. We all are not without flaw, you or I or Karehma or anyone. And critique is good, but it doesn't feel good when everybody's coming at you with the critique and they don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
So right. I get it because they're critiquing the wrong thing.
They worried on the wrong ish.
They talking about you being light skinned and all kind of stuff. Girl, what? Instagram commenters, get it together.
I mean, like the analysis alone was just how many like really stray and conflated points people were making. Like that's like first before like really giving like I guess an assessment on Amanda as a person, you had to clean up all the other garbage comments first. You know what I'm saying? Like just so many things that was neither here nor there. Like the victim mentality kind of thing, people wanted to say like she was saying that she was she had autism as like a I don't know, like yeah, you know, like she was using that as a mental illness. And I'm like, I didn't hear her describe it as a mental illness. She did talk about being suicidal. She did talk about having depression. And I understand that maybe those points ran so close together that maybe you want to fuse them together and deduce that she was trying to say that she had mental illness. But I never once heard her say that. What I heard her say was, my mind works this way. I lined up peanuts. I would line up peanuts. I'm fixated on things. I go in on like what it is that I believe in. And that's a superpower of mine that I understand can rub people the wrong way. Not once did I hear her say, well, please feel sorry for me and give me a pass because I have autism. In fact, most people, they may develop an identity by way of their diagnosis so that people can understand. And we always say that understanding is not the same as agreeing. Like I've heard really decently smart people say that time and time again. I'm like, okay, well, don't agree, understand. Like you now knowing that, take that when people may try and make a clarifying point about their neurodivergence or whatever have you, understand that they are just seeking to be understood.
Understood. Not for you to say, oh, you're right, or what you did was right.
Yeah.
It's just like, I want you to understand how I got here.
And what my intent was.
This is why I did what I did.
Yeah.
So Amanda, we love you. I hope someone listens to this podcast and gets a very nuanced understanding of how things work in this world that we live in, this America, based on these things and based on the things that she said in the interview, based on the comments people were making towards us. And if we went all over the place, I hope you were entertained. Are you not entertained? So in true Tynee Talks fashion, this is the point of the show where you give your shout out. So you want to give a shout out to?
Oh man, shoot. Shout out to my mom. Tomorrow is Mother's Day. Shout out to Miss Carmen all the way in Flint, Michigan. And yeah, just shout out to everybody that in Cincinnati, all of my friends and friends like family there. And yeah, that's it. I'm gonna keep it simple.
All right, and happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. You do so much. Those who gave birth and those who mother those around them and care for them in such a mothering way. We appreciate you. You are appreciated. Thank you, Karehma, for being a guest on this show and bringing your intelligence like you always do. You're one of the most brilliant people I know. I tell people that all the time. Like, Karehma's so brilliant. She's just so brilliant. She's been smart, you know. When we were in middle school together, you know, you be in competition a little bit like, okay, I'm about to get this 4.0 too. You know what I mean? I don't think kids do that no more. They more want to have a competition on who got the best buzz down.
Listen. It's a different time. It's a different time.
Thank you for listening to the Tynee Talks podcast, the podcast where it educates and entertains, the podcast where you come to laugh and, of course, learn.